Okay, so let me ask a question of our organizer. Should we have some comments and questions? Okay, give me a sign when you're ready. I did want to make one comment. I won't show my slides, but we have had success ourselves recently, I think partially because of generating some credibility by doing projects that are actually deployed. But there seems to us to be a very strong industry interest in working in this area. We have a GE project, GE FedEx project with Con Ed, also doing a electric delivery vehicle, the GE Ecomagination competition. This will, I guess we view fleets and fleets as a good place to start with electric vehicles because they have a good central charging place they can go to. They have limited routes, so you can plan. They won't get stuck anywhere. You don't have the range anxiety issues. And we think this could be the start of a large set of projects. A number of others too. I think I won't go into, but to give you all a chance to say something. One of the hopes was that you would have a chance to ask questions. So why don't you line up to the microphones if you have them? Questions?
I have one if I can.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So, Stephen, I mean, I'm curious if you could describe for everybody in a way that's I guess has some lucidity to it. What about the species modeling problem required you to change what you were doing in machine learning to do something new?
Yes, okay.
That's attributes or properties.
Thank you. So you've justified these particular, how do I get the?
It's up, it's up.
So the particular pictures that I had there. So one of the particularities of modeling species distributions is that there's a lot of information that you'd want that's completely missing. And one broad class of information that's missing for most species is information about where they aren't. So typically, over the last couple of 100 years, people have gone out looking for species, trying to understand where things are, and they've recorded when they found things, but they haven't said where they've looked and they haven't found things. And so,
a reporting model, basically.
Yes, yeah. So then you have only one of the two classes of data that you're looking for. And so the example here is a jaguar and a javelina, which have very similar ranges. The jaguar, of course, is a much rarer species than the javelina, but based on most of the data that's available, which is just places where they've been found, you would say that they have the same distribution. And in the sense of making a map, they do. But if you want to say what's the probability of finding a jaguar when I go to a site, this data alone doesn't tell you. So you have to work with that lack of information, the fact that most of the databases, in particular, don't tell you how rare a species is. It just gives you the geographic distribution independent of their rarity.
Okay, Doug?
Yeah, this was a fascinating panel. Thank you so much. Do industry research labs typically worry about rebound effects? I think Art might have mentioned something about this, and Eve's employment of social scientists gave me some hope that when you change a technology, for example, when you make our laptops more energy efficient, people use them for more and the collective footprint goes up. Is this something that industry worries a great deal about in employing social scientists to try and anticipate the unanticipated consequences of technology, for example?
Who wants to take that?
I can comment a little bit. We haven't looked so much at unanticipated consequences. We often will go in and do some field studies actually all around the world. You know, you talk about the typical digital home. There is no typical digital home, but you deploy people all over the place. What we're really looking for is kind of people's attitudes to gauge the what ifs of putting technology there. Do they even want the technology? How would they use it, given what you now understand about their lifestyle? And so working backwards from how people live and function might curtail or change the way you design something from the get-go. It's not after the fact. So that's the way that we've been using social sciences, at least in the energy lab right now.
I have to say that like you pushed me to think about where there's a rebound effect. I'm thinking of you have an airbag now, so you go faster in your car, where you take your seatbelts off. But I think a lot of these examples are win-win, where it's not a trade that people will perceive as something that makes them do more. For example, I think most people would probably want to have magically, if it was easy to do, their computers at home turned off when they're not being used. But if I ask people in this audience right now, how many people have computers home that just keep on 24/7 because, you know, God, I have stuff up in the air. I don't want to get it set up again. I don't want to reboot. We're all like that. And so a win there doesn't mean you'd use your computer more. You know? So I just...
In fact, it might mean that you use your telephone instead.
If they boot it up faster, we might
Yeah,
do it.
even as a fast boot up, or
So that
just,
might be a good,
I think also
energy
state, I think state savings, that's kind of an HCI issue, but saving state is not done very well right now.
I have a question for Eve, which is the same question that was asked of Stephen. How,
Art wanted to answer.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. There was one instance I remember that was kind of counterintuitive, but when the Energy Star for computers was launched, the anticipation was that even though that was going to save energy, and it was, by the way, with Intel was the leader of that, and Microsoft, anticipation was that even though the energy per computer might be reduced, that the total need for energy for computers was going to be larger, and we tried to estimate that. And there was quite a bit of effort in terms of the dynamic that was going to be going on with people. And that was a series of studies that went on for about 5 years after that whole program, to see if it did, in fact, that program did in fact save energy. And there was a lot of contention about whether it did or didn't, because there was increasing amounts of energy that were used by computers.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think this is for the Microsoft person. So you were talking about, acceptance and trust, and then that leading to findings, to social acceptance. And it looks to me, we worked at MIT for like 10 years on the designing of electricity markets. And one thing that was clear was that was very little on the demand side. In other words, demand functions were just not existent. It was one-sided market. You just have suppliers selling electricity. Can one look at what you are talking about as a sort of IT infrastructure to sort of consolidate retail side of the market according to choice, and then communicate it to utilities that, you know, we have a more balanced market according to the needs of customers? I don't know if I'm clear here, but I think that's one huge problem in the, you know, sort of utilities are designing open loop. They don't know what the preferences are, etc. So if I understood what you are saying, you would have these communications and the intelligence which actually would feed utility what the needs are. Could you comment a little bit on that?
So I think you're generalizing in a beautiful way beyond what I was saying, but very appropriately so. And there's a trend in computer science, especially where the applications face people, to represent richer preference models and capture them with ease. Even in healthcare decision making these days, it's really hard to get these preferences for which decisions are actually very sensitive, and to get them into the whole system end to end. And certainly it's difficult, especially where people are saving, if you ask them point blank, they're just saving pennies different per month. So where a single person wouldn't put the effort in, but if there was an easy tool to use and communities could use it and maybe making community decisions, or competing utility companies could basically say, you know, we do better because of X, Y, and Z, and your preferences are better managed by us. Even if it was fixed preferences, that could have a big impact, I would think. So I'll just answer by saying it's a really great comment and question, and I think that even the subtle use of varying preferences and trades, if they're properly encoded, would go a long way in this area.
Just one more line. So I think that, you know, we are challenged by Federal Commission, etc., to simulate and test how well this market design, electricity market, is versus something else. If you have ancillary service or you have just energy on capacity, so it's all pushed from the, you know, supply side. I think you cannot even test them well without knowing what the need for the market service is. And I really think that that's something that should be pushed. You know. It's not my area.
Yeah. And just to make it concrete, throw in an example from our discussion group that Dave didn't mention this morning. We said, imagine in a city someday, instead of, let's say we stick with our bottleneck resources where they are now, instead of browning out several blocks in Los Angeles,
exactly.
we actually, people have their thermostats for their AC units controlled by by the power company, and once in a while, based on their preferences and the community preferences, their AC level goes to 78 from 72. And they don't know, well, it's part of the deal. It's being controlled across a whole city in a way that there's no brownout, but people are getting a little bit warmer sometimes, and they just know it's part of the whole optimization in accordance with their preferences that they assessed individually. That can happen someday, but we also, along with that, comes along new kinds of interventions and machinery that might go along with that to make the trades more interesting than they are today.
I had one quick question of Eve, which is the same question that was asked of Stephen, which is what motivates Intel to do this? And in particular, the money saving can't be the issue for the renewable energy savings, and it's not so clear that there's a transfer there either. The public relations, I guess, would apply, but can you say?
Well, as you can tell from the kinds of activities that Intel's involved in, they do care a lot about what their reputation is. But they are looking at their own bottom line, so they're doing a lot of introspection about, oh, well, if we change the way our data centers functioned or put renewables, had solar deployed on some square footage of roofage, what would the impact be to our bottom line? So they care about that. They care also about, they believe that their reputation is going to impact people to buy their products in the same way that if you say, I have an energy efficient, Energy Star compliant piece of equipment, people are going to buy it. However, like anywhere, and actually I didn't really get to say this in the presentation, I do think that it goes back to something somebody just recently said after lunch, which was, how do you get big company, well, the disconnect between there's all this interesting work and then the application of the interesting work. Big companies, we have a lot of research going on, and if you can't find a way to make a case for it for a business unit, which is a very short-term kind of proposition, a lot of times it will die on the vine. And so you have to sort of protect that work. And I don't think the government can actually go it alone, this sustainability effort. So you have to get companies to find ways. Now, Intel, they're in a huge number of diverse areas. So you could imagine that they care a lot about data centers and substations, all the information coming back. That seems like an easy one. But then they also are interested, there's the fastest growing part of Intel is the embedded computing group. And they do things like hardening their processors to be put in wind turbines. They have some very large percentage of the market in wind turbines. I had no idea until about a year ago. So there are things like that that motivate Intel to stay involved. They recognize that from doing one of kinds of products all the way to servers, they will make inroads, plus the reputation factor. It all ties together.
All right, I think we'll wrap it up here, and thank all our speakers again.